Coming up on MacBreak Weekly, I sit down with Andy Ihnatko, Rene Ritchie, and Alex Lindsay while Leo is off gallivanting around CES to bring you the latest in Apple and their place at CES, the FBI asking Apple to unlock iPhones again, Apple winning Christmas and a brand new high on their stocks, as well as so much more, including that poop emoji on your AirPods. Stay tuned because there's a lot of nonsense and a lot to love coming up on MacBreak Weekly. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you from LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? Well, LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode number 695, recorded January 7th, 2020. Andy loves the listeners. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Health IQ. Health IQ uses science and data to secure lower life insurance rates for healthy people like you. To see if you qualify, go to healthiq.com/MacBreak to take the Health IQ quiz that could help you save up to 41% on your life insurance premiums compared to other providers. It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Leo Laporte is out this week because he is on the ground at CES, hopefully not getting the conference crud. But I, blessedly so happy, got to keep my feet firmly planted here in Petaluma, California, away from the handshaking and all the other germs that are involved with Las Vegas. That little chuckle you heard is Rene Ritchie of Vector, iMore, Mobile Nations, Future Fame, all that and so many colors and beautiful lights. Rene Ritchie, how the heck are you?
It is so good to see you, Mikah. Mutual friend and actually co-host of the show, Lori Gill, sent me a picture of Leo in one of those little Segway egg chairs, just looking so happy last night.
What?
So that's how I'm going to picture them for the rest of the show. Yeah.
So Leo is Dr. Eggman. I guess that makes Lori Tails. And are you Sonic?
Well, maybe I don't know. One of the nemesis is
obviously
we'll
Georgia Dow is Knuckles. Like there's nobody else who could be Knuckles. Yeah. I'll be one of those little Tamagotchi type things that's in Sonic.
So cool.
I don't remember.
Be Baby Sonic.
Oh, I'll be Baby Sonic, who doesn't know about TikTok or Ninja. Joining us as well across the internet and to my far left is WGBH's Andy Ihnatko, also with some great color, some great light. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, particularly because I'm not at CES. I'm like the Secretary of Agriculture that they say, okay, we have to have one journalist that stays 3,000 miles away from CES so that if, God forbid, all tech journalists get disillusioned at the same time, someone will still be around to talk about this sort of stuff. That's the big disaster when we realize that this is all just a terrible PR stunt and that Segway has no intention of ever shipping that egg-shaped chair ever. They just wanted to get the A-roll.
We are happy to have Andy Ihnatko as the designated survivor. Joining me right here in the studio is Alex Lindsay of Pixel Core, and I'm very excited to see your takedown of the live videos you were talking about before the show.
I decided that next week I'm going to release a new teardown because I've just had it. Like I've been watching too many things, and I've just reached a point where I was like, I got to start doing this again. So I'll start doing them next week, and some of the CES keynotes were great fodder.
Yay!
I love this is why all the news shows need to have like a wide panel to get different opinions and takes on things. Because like you should be on like the Sunday news shows because like you'll have this one person who's gonna be talking about yes, but what you don't understand is what the economic things about World War III are going to be. The other one's going to be saying yeah, but you don't understand how that totally destabilizes the political scene. Then Alex is like, let's talk about the frame rate on the live feed when the president announced the missiles.
Yeah. All I want to do is see Alex circle both the AMD pitch for using fan renders of the Xbox and then the Samsung pitch for using the Apple icons for wallet. And I think both of those just draw those up into whoopsies.
Yeah, there was a lot of examples of things not to do.
And I can't wait to learn all of them. Now, iMore is doing us all a great service this week by cataloging and documenting all of the things that CES is bringing to us from Apple. So all of the Apple-related announcements. There's an ongoing document here so that, again, we don't have to get the conference crud, but we get to learn a little bit about what's happening. Now, Renee, Apple is at CES this year for the first time in quite a while, but they're not there in the capacity of having some big, stage where they are showing us the latest from Apple. What is Apple actually doing at CES?
So, I mean, Apple hasn't had a booth at CES or hasn't had a keynote in CES for as long as people can remember CES. They've always sent people there like buyers for the Apple retail store. They go and see what products they want to put on the shelves, just like Best Buy and the others do. And Apple marketing people are there to see how like HomeKit or HealthKit or other partner stuff is going and to help them out and talk to them and catch up. But this year, Jane, I don't know if it's Hoath or Howarth. I might be pronouncing that wrong, so I apologize. But she's Apple's director of privacy, and she's going to be there giving a speech on privacy, which is Apple doesn't usually join into these large speaker movement things, but I think they believe so much in privacy and advocating for privacy. Last year, Tim Cook gave a speech at the European Council on privacy, and as much as I love them putting up billboards, because then if they ever make any mistake whatsoever, we can say, you idiot, you put up a billboard, now live up to this. I think it's much more functional for them to actually have people talking about their values and ethics and the importance of privacy and security at these events.
And I bet that Tim Cook is saying, you know what? I'm so glad that I decided to attend the Golden Globes in person rather than speak at CES.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
The executive who recommended that to me and booked that table for me is definitely going to be getting a fruit basket.
Yeah, well, not a fruit basket, a fruit cake basket. Yeah. That was rough, huh? I have to admit, I don't really watch any of these award shows, but I saw plenty of the conversation there on Twitter. So Ricky Gervais, basically,
you might know Mikah from a little show called The Office.
Okay, but see, the UK version of The Office. I don't want to get into it. There are fans out there of that horribly sad and devastating show that is the UK version of The Office. It's so grim, so dark, just like Ricky Gervais can be.
Yes.
Anywho, he basically took the time to not only roast Apple, but also talked about how no one wants to hear the opinions of celebrities, of which he is one, sharing his opinion as a celebrity. So
from his iPhone.
Yeah, that was it was he was making a joke, but was one of those, oh crap, don't make that joke. So if you're sitting in the audience, where he was saying that, look, you're all going to be coming up here and talking about human rights, meanwhile, like, you're working for these streaming companies that are just total bastards, and pointed I don't know what the joke was, but pointing out that
ISIS, like if ISIS called you, call your agents.
If ISIS had a streaming channel and called out oh dear, it was like, and called out the Apple's streaming service, then you see cut to Tim like sitting at his table, like,
yeah, that smile on his face,
and then the joke comes that Apple's using like child labor in China, and of course, and they didn't cut back to him to see it going, oh, what a witty jape that was.
No, but they kept cutting to Tom Hanks, who had like the best reaction shot of the evening.
Yeah, in fact,
like he couldn't believe what he was hearing.
Tom Hanks' reaction shot was shared with me by several friends in memes that had already been created in the moments after that had happened.
And he was trending right along with it. He was like, the speech was trending, and Tom Hanks' reactions were trending.
Well, I think that the casting of
there it is.
He's like, wow, this guy is off the rails.
That is so great. You
got to realize this is genius. Your press organizations. There's a lot of tense between the press and the actors. There's a lot of tenseness.
Yeah,
a lot of times. So if you were press and you just wanted to kick the crap out of actors, what you do is you create an event and you offer them little things to hold on to and some TV time, and then you bash them. But you don't do it. You don't, as press, you don't do it. You sit in the table and you look at him and go, I can't believe he said that. like it is insane. I can't believe
served alcohol, right? Like they were all drunk.
I can't believe the actors show up for this. Like I can see why some of them go, well, I was sick. Who was I? Like I'm not
I'm sorry, I couldn't have made it there.
I think there's going to be some point if they don't get rid of him. I think this is his last year. I mean, he says that every year, but I think
what's
this
what he
is
said.
really
I
his
don't
last
care.
year.
I don't care. It's my last year. I don't care.
Exactly. Well, I think that this one really is his last year. I think that people are going to stop coming in.
I'm sorry.
All I'm going to say is that it is reference to sweatshops. It's always great to hear from people who have never actually created a company talk about how to turn a $70 billion train a little bit, and the fact that Apple is working on this every single, all the time, to improve that. And the fact that the technology sector in China has brought most of the country out of poverty. It's not perfect, and neither was our growth in the United States. Like we have this thing, like everybody has to now be the way we are, not looking at the fact that we did a lot of ugly stuff and beat up a lot of things to get to where we were too. So everybody's got kind of a growth curve that everyone's going through, and China's going through that now too. But I always think when people make that comment, there's a little check of, you've never actually created a company that made anything. We don't need to hear from you.
Okay, well, he did like make The Office, which is like one of the most
making products. Wait, I just want to say, making products and making words are completely different things. And they are not anywhere in the same world of each other, and the level of logistics that's required to put them together is not at all the same. So someone who makes words shouldn't tell someone who makes products how to do that unless they've actually done it. That's all.
Totally disagree, but what I was going to say was just that I kind of cringed at it because, like you said, Apple is doing a lot more than most companies are. Most companies are saying that they care about, hey, there are laws and we make sure that our subcontractors follow those laws. We have audits and stuff. Apple is actually putting skin in the game, and when you follow up the question with, okay, but what are you actually doing to make sure that that's happening proactively? Apple can say, here is what we're doing proactively, and then you're like, oh, I thought that, yeah, exactly. Well, so my reaction to that joke was, wow, I can't believe he said that, when he really could have been saying things about how Apple is cozying up to a kind of unstrung domestic leader, and also is kind of cozying up to foreign leaders who are maybe not unstrung, but maybe doing things that are contrary to values. And what are you doing leaving Amazon alone? Because what frustrates me is that Amazon is all these, there's Google, Facebook. You're like, how about Amazon, that's basically selling like surveillance systems to federal law enforcement, trying to encourage domestic surveillance systems to local law enforcement. They're selling cloud computing services to pretty much anybody who has an evil thunder machine that needs powering by really powerful computing. Like, I just want to make sure that if you're throwing darts, that one of the people blindfolded and nervously clicking on a cigarette is Amazon. Jeff Bezos needs to be up there on the firing line as well.
He did include him in his credit. He's been extremely good at staying out of the limelight for the most part.
Which is odd.
No, he was included in the ISIS comment, though. He did say Apple, and you're all being paid by Apple and Amazon and Disney. And if ISIS created a streaming service, you would have your agents call it tomorrow. Again, sent from his iPhone, because he's part of the problem.
Yeah, but Disney, the worst thing that Disney has done is taken the Star Wars franchise and just turned it into another blockbuster. That's not a human rights thing. That's more of a disappointing old people like.
I'd argue they didn't even do that successfully based on several of the last few movies.
Yeah.
Disney, though,
if you enjoyed the movies, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I'm not saying that you should not have enjoyed it. I'm just saying that
objectively, the box office didn't do as well as the precedents, though.
It seems to me that
there was a certain fall off.
While Disney may not have that sort of overt issue, they kind of own everything and continue to just scoop up more and more and more and more.
Well, they've gotten,
and that makes me a little.
It was a genius
sketchy.
move, by the way. Like Disney didn't start with everything. They started with their own products, which was fine. But the idea that when you look at the trajectory, you understand why some CEOs get paid a lot of money. Iger at some point figured this out, and then quietly bought, Pixar, then Marvel, then Lucasfilm,
the Muppets.
You know, and
it's exactly
the
this.
NFL.
He saw what was, but he saw
not the NFL,
but he saw what he saw was, and a lot of us talked about it 20 years ago. I mean, we could see what was going to happen, which was that we're going to stop going to movies this way. I mean, a lot of us were writing about it and talking about it in 2005. You know, like we could see this trajectory of, you know, people aren't going to keep on going to movies if their screens get this as good as they're getting at home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not going to make sense, you know. And so, and the movies that you will go to are going to be adventure movies that are cinematic and big sound and big, because that's what you want to see bigger than you're at home. What they're not going to go to is romantic comedies, you know, and kids flicks. And so, what they did really well was pivot and say, we're going to just hoover up all the things that you'd want to see in a big, on
all
a
the
big
characters
screen.
and stories,
and it's paying off.
Yeah. I think one of the smartest things, it wasn't just understanding streaming, but understanding that this really is going to be about international marketing. And so if you can buy Coke by writing a check, if for some stupid reason Coca-Cola is willing to sell this amazing international brand, it doesn't matter what you put in the bottles, you will make a fortune. So and in a corporate sense, and this is not meant to be a dig, this is just simple business, the most likely the most likely people to take something like Marvel superheroes or Star Wars or any of those quote properties and make massive profits on it is to divorce it from the people who really created it and have emotional investment in it, because you can see. I don't think that there'll ever be a Marvel movie that tries to do what the Christopher Nolan Batman movies did, or what the Joker movie did, or promote a character as interesting as Deadpool, which of course was from the old regime, or Harley Quinn. Because there's a certain person who's going to say, no, you can't have the Joker doing this, or I know that it would be kind of interesting to have an event. The six. I'm about to go on a bad tangent, but it would be fun to have the Hulkbuster armor suddenly make an irrational appearance, but actually the story that we're telling there doesn't make any sense. Whereas Disney, someone who's just bought it, saying we're going to make $1 billion. This is an attainable goal for every superhero movie we do. Part of it is going to be, we're not going to do anything to get China angry with us. We're not going to do anything that will make it harder for younger people to see these movies. So we're not going to do anything that's even a soft R or a hard PG-13. Those are the people that can take a franchise and really make sure that you put $300,000 or $400,000 in, you take $1.2 billion out, and you get to do that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times a year.
I do want to do a pivot here. Still about CES, still about Apple, and Apple related stuff at CES. Let's talk about the Brydge Pro Plus. This is a new keyboard from the Brydge folks. I and Leo, I know for sure, both have the Brydge Pro keyboard that essentially turns your iPad Pro into what looks like a little MacBook. It's kind of heavy. It's made of aluminum and has a great little keyboard on it with a backlit screen. But now Brydge is coming out with the Brydge Pro Plus, which includes a trackpad. So this is fascinating. In the latest version of iOS, you can access in the accessibility settings a way to actually use a pointer with your device. So that could be an external mouse or a trackpad. And in the case of Brydge, they've created both a keyboard that has a trackpad built in and a separate Bluetooth trackpad that you can use with your iOS device. Interesting stuff. So cool. I'm just curious how everybody feels about that, because for some people it's like, oh, but why wouldn't I just get a MacBook? And I'm wondering what everyone's take is here at this
So I
table.
think Lori's review is already up of it. She's been testing it for a while, and she had it for embargo, and I think she really liked it. We tried to dare her to just do all of CES on the iPad Pro with the Brydge keyboard, but she was leaving the next day, and she's like, I really want to, but if anything, absolutely anything goes wrong, I'm going to need a backup. So I don't know what she did ultimately. But I think, like, I've always advocated for an iOS clamshell. I think there's a lot of, and I know Apple has them internally. They've been testing them for a decade internally. But I just think the laptop form factor is so classic. And I totally get the iPad. I think it's a totally separate thing. But just the idea of an iOS device, even for kids in school or just people who travel a lot and they don't need all the stuff that's on OS 10, almost like a Chromebook play, where it's like 80% of the stuff that 80% of the people need 80% of the time. Super light, battery life goes forever. It's a completely sandboxed environment, so nothing will go wrong. You don't have to worry about downloading things, and you can just use it. And Apple so far hasn't had any interest in making that, but I think it's really cool that there's finally, like markdown finally alternatives from third parties that include not only the keyboard, but the trackpad, because for me, it's never been about, you have to have a screen, you have to have a touch screen, you have to have a keyboard. It's like, I don't want to move my hands. My hands are super productive where they are. Stop making me change modes, because when I change modes, I lose track of what I'm doing and it hurts me. And this just lets you keep your hands there and work. And
I think a good example for me is OmniGraffle, which I use a lot. So I build all my diagrams for how I'm going to wire things in OmniGraffle. I can't do that on the iPad. So I have OmniGraffle on the iPad, but I can't do anything that detailed because I can't do that with my finger in the middle of it. When you have a lot of high-frequency connections, I can't put my finger over top of it and still see what I'm doing. And the whole interface of how you're going to click on that and how you're going to do it, I still have to go back to a computer to do that. And I think that's a good example of, in a lot of creative stuff, whether it's Photoshop or Illustrator or OmniGraffle, you're going to see things where you cannot get it. You just simply can't do it effectively.
Even with the pencil,
on
Alex?
the iPad. What?
Even with Apple Pencil, still not.
It's just the way that the interface works and because it's set up for touch, it just becomes this very heavy thing. And to be honest with you, I haven't tried it with a pencil, so I'm going to try it. Now that you've said that, I'm going to go back and try it. So I don't know. I just know that for a long time, the problem that I had was I couldn't. I can do I could do certain kinds of diagrams on the iPad, and I would prefer probably 80% of the time now that I'm outside of my house, I'm on my iPad. I don't take my laptop anymore. It sits as a little controller for my switcher. So I still need the real Photoshop, and I need a couple other things that are still on the laptop and some of the heavier stuff. But when I'm leaving, I generally go. I kind of sandbox my life in a lot of ways, that if I'm going to do heavy work, I do it at home, and when I go out, I'm not taking that, because I do like the fact that it's much more secure. It's everything's been backed up. If I lose it, it's not that big of a deal. It's a big deal, but it's not. The thing that I worry about with my laptop all the time is that there's a bunch of stuff on it, that I'm pretty good at backing up, but I like the fact that the iPad kind of forces me to keep it all in iCloud and not worry about it.
And I think this is a really cool step forward. I don't know whether when I saw the announcement, why are my glasses so wonky? Oh well. I'll just sit with my head like a little bit like this, so it doesn't. Anyway.
Hey John, can you rotate his view just like? I totally agree with Renee. There you go. See, now you're seeing the curse of having a background that has vertical and horizontal lines. That's like, oh, damn it. There's Apple has done a lot of really bold and wonderful things with the iPad, in which they are insisting correctly that this is a real computer. This isn't just this. Amazon did some cool things with the Fire, where for $50 you get a color HD tablet that you can happily let your kids in the backseat of the car watch their movies and play their games with, because if they break it, again, go reach into the glove box, grab another one out of the pile of 10 that you bought during Black Friday, and hand them another one. Apple is making the case, though, that this isn't a media device. This isn't just for reading books or Apple News. This is a real computer that you actually do real. They don't want to say work, but you actually are productive on. And as much as the computers of the future in the movies imply that, oh well, no, you can tell this is a future computer because there's no keyboard.
keyboard. Well, the thing is, we think about it, we've had keyboards since the 60s and the 70s, and people are still using that for data input. We've not found anything better. We found out that maybe if you have some sort of a touch device, a pointing device, that's a good thing to add to it, but you still need a keyboard. And the promotion of the Brydge to say, for those of us who really are using an iPad I'm outside of the office, this is as much as I need, but I still need to be able to write stuff and get through an inbox. I want a premium experience with that keyboard. It's nice to have a super thin keyboard cover that's great for portability. But if I really am saying I'm going to be taking this one computer with me because I'm going to be going for the weekend, I want a premium experience. And throwing in a trackpad is when I read about this, it was such it was one of those lean back, stroke your put on the fake beard and stroke the beard moments, because Brydge makes a whole bunch of these keyboards for a whole bunch of different computers. They make the official sort of really cool keyboard touchpad trackpad solution for Google's Pixel tablet device that they've now decided that maybe wasn't such a good idea after all. So it's not as though they had to acquire a company and figure out how to integrate a trackpad into this popular device. They simply took all their understanding, probably a lot of their tooling, and simply said, great, we're going to throw that into an iPad keyboard as well. So I don't know whether that was just them realizing that, it wouldn't cost us a whole lot of money to just simply come out with a trackpad version of it, because now that there is some sort of trackpad support, not only would it help for people who actually use those assistance features for the reasons for which they were originally designed, but also there are people who don't need them but want to use them. Why don't we just do that anyway, as opposed to have they had certain conversations with certain people inside of Apple that led them to believe, or were directly led on to say, that perhaps it would be very, very good for them to have a product like this already on the market, boxed and on Apple Store shelves before October or September of this year, shall we say? Are they taking a bet that real trackpad support for iOS is coming, or at least is inevitable? In any event, for those of us who you have to understand, outside of the Apple market, I paid $1,100, probably something like that, for my iPad Pro. I love it. I've gotten so much value out of it. But if I took that budget and said, well, what can I buy if I simply wanted to have a computer for outside the house for long weekends and stuff like that? I could have bought a kick butt Chromebook. I could have bought a very, very good mid-range Windows 10 device. Those of us who invested in iPads and use it because we like them, it's just another way for us to get that full value out of it. Because, like Renee said, taking your hands off the keyboard stinks. It's terrible. It makes me feel as though I'm unloved by somebody, and perhaps even God.
At the same time, I would love to have a touchscreen on my Mac. The
exactly.
thing is
same reason.
I use the a lot of the stuff when I do reviews, when I review documents that are coming to me, or if I review a lot of times I get graphic stuff that, interfaces and so on and so forth that I have to mark up. I take that on my iPad. I want to do that on my iPad. I want to circle things and draw on things and write on things. I don't want to type it up or do some weird little square, or, all of those things are things that I don't, what's crazy right now is that Apple doesn't give us all of one thing or the other.
Right.
I personally think they're not giving us a touchscreen on the Mac because it'll hold us to it for longer, because it would kind of fulfill what I needed.
Well, they just don't have the resources. They would have to take people off the iPad team to work on the Mac, and they don't feel like, Microsoft did that, and they went through Windows 7 and Windows 8 before they got out on the other side with Windows 10, which is, I think, 99% of the way there. But if Apple's already shown that, they pay very little, I would argue, and not enough attention to the Mac as it is. And if you start pulling people off to do touch implementation, that's a couple of years of work when they already have a super successful touch operating system.
It is, but as a user, I don't need them to fix anything on the touch stuff. I just need them to put it
implement
in.
It. I've got
the thing is that I just need them to put it in so that I can, because if you put it on, as you use your iPad as the second screen, and you touch stuff there, It works fine. I'll know
just
where to
basic
use it and where
gesture
not to use
support,
it.
right? Like what's on the trackpad. Just like let me swipe, let me tap, let me.
I have the new Surface. I have the new
just wanna be able
Surface
to draw.
laptop.
I just want to be able to draw.
Right, I have the new Surface laptop, and it has a touch screen as part of the experience. A great keyboard. It's well designed, but it makes me now, quite literally before this show began, I went to reach out with my finger to touch on the notifications bar on my Mac to try and turn on Do Not Disturb mode. It has me thinking that way. And I would love to have, in those cases where it made sense, the ability to do so. Now, I want to say, you said earlier it was, Andy, you were talking about how you want them to, if maybe it's a bet that they will offer real support of trackpads or other pointing devices on an iPad. Two things I found kind of fascinating. I was talking to Rosemary Orchard on iOS Today yesterday, which was published this morning, and she uses a mouse, a Logitech mouse, almost exclusively with her iPad with a keyboard. And not only is she able to use that mouse, by the way, the little assistive touch square, you can set it to not be on the screen whenever you have one of these external pointing devices there, so it doesn't get in the way. But also, each of the extra buttons on her mouse can be configured to do different things. So she can actually run shortcuts on her iPad from her mouse, which I find, I think that's a really deep implementation already that they have. It's just, there's this little mental block almost where it's tucked under accessibility settings, so it doesn't have that same root feel where it's a pushed feature. And I don't know.
That's the team that did it.
Well, but we've talked about this before. One of the I love these. The best way to do a pro feature, like not for the 80% of the users, but for the 20% of the users, is to put it on a shelf where only the people who really want those kind of features will find it, because they're going to find it. If there's a way for me to edit a document on my iPad with the precision of a mouse, that's where I do have like a mouse connected to every single desktop I have, because when I'm doing editing, when I really need to move text around, there's no quicker way to precisely select text and move it around. So instead of having a feature first sort of implementation of a pointing device, simply say there is this feature in settings, and if you click this onto this way, then you're going to be able to access, and it won't be information through Apple. You'll get it off of iMore or another really cool like a site that tells you how to do things on the stuff that you paid for. Here's how to do. The people who need that sort of stuff are going to find it, and it's kind of shocking. Every time there are times when I have had I've had a big deadline or a big project that I had to really push the status forward on a day that was, if you know what I mean, a holy day of familial obligation, where there's absolutely no way you're getting out of this. Your relatives from Eastern Europe are visiting, and the whole family is getting together. There is no way you're even going to be able to come late, because that way everybody even remotely associated with the family is going to realize that, oh, I guess he doesn't put family first. And they're going to talk. And so on those occasions, I will say, great, here's my phone. Here is here is a portable-ish keyboard that lets me type really, really well. And here is a mouse. And if you hook up, the idea of having a phone that you also are using a mouse and a keyboard with is, I can actually get most of the experience that I want, because yes, the screen is really, really tiny, but I can type as fast as I want. I can, when I'm really under pressure, I've suddenly realized that these 3 paragraphs that I started with have no point. They need to go, or they need to be moved. And it opens up this thing that it suddenly stops thinking. You stop thinking about this as a pocket-sized multimedia and internet device, and you start thinking that, no, this really is a computer. I can do anything I want with it. I'm only limited by the tactile interface that obviously they can't put into the main device. But the idea of being able to buy a bog standard Bluetooth keyboard and simply pair it, and suddenly a mouse pointer appears where there was no mouse pointer before, and you realize that this is not bad. If they had advertised this as a revolutionary feature that you should buy an iOS device because of this pointer, maybe you'd be disappointed. But if you are used to not having a mouse pointer of any kind, you'd be thrilled with it. So I love these kind of features where the pros will find it if you put it in there. You don't even have to publicize it because, again, there are people like Lori and organizations like iMore that are saying, Chet, your mission for the next 3 days is to simply screw around with this new feature that we saw and documented at WWDC that we have a hunch could be exploited in a really wonderful way. And if you can't, that's fine. But you're here to spend 3 days pushing every button and using every option on the keyboard you possibly can to see how well this can be exploited. We will find it. If you build it, they will come.
And I think the next step is for developers. I think it may be having a mouse mode. So while Andy's talking, I took Renee's suggestion and jumped into OmniGraffle, and I know I couldn't use the iPad version. So, but the reason for that is specifically because the selection points are fat finger size, not selector size.
Right.
And so it makes it really hard for the number of connections that I would need to make. It'd make it very hard for me to actually work quickly. And so what I would need from OmniGraffle, as an example, but I think this is relatable to many applications, is that I would need OmniGraffle to have a quote-unquote mouse setting, which is hidden somewhere, and you just go into the things in mouse setting, and it makes everything, all the selection points smaller. It gets you back into a kind of a laptop experience. And there's lots of places where I'd love to be able to go back and forth, or I'd love to be able to, do it, but being able to maybe even get back to some of the same keystrokes and so on and so forth in the iOS version that you'd see in the Mac version kind of helps us kind of pull all of that together.
Well put. I think that's going to cover it for stuff at CES for now. There's plenty more on the way as CES actually kicks off. But until then, let's talk about the FBI, which is back at it again. Asking Apple to unlock an iPhone of the suspect in the Pensacola naval base shooting. So we have, again, the FBI reaching out and saying, we could use your assistance in unlocking this cell phone for the report or for the investigation that we're doing. This, of course, is the shooting suspect.
So why is it? So my question is, why is this public? Because as far as I know, the FBI asks this all the time. Like Apple gets requests all the time. They document how many law enforcement requests they get. So I'm just curious why it's not a completely thing.
This is completely a political move by the FBI. They have a soft target that is going to make people feel bad. And this is a good example for them to kind of keep on pushing their little case along. This is why they're doing that. This has nothing to do with, I mean, you're absolutely right, Renee. There are plenty of these requests that go by, but because this one has a lot of press, they're now going to bring it up. And they're going to ignore the fact that the NSA can't even keep their own secrets secret.
Yeah. The law enforcement needs a portfolio of case studies of here's what we were not able to accomplish because encryption on these devices is on by default and there's no backdoor for us. I'm sure I don't want to sound cynical. I'm absolutely certain that as Renee said, these requests are routine, and the FBI is doing it through the proper channels. They aren't just simply bullying Apple in the press. They got a court order. They certainly have a case where the data on this phone is very pertinent to the case that we're developing. However, as another benefit, I'm sorry, I don't want to say benefit is probably tasteless, but I think that law enforcement is collectively is also very, very aware that the more times they can say that Apple did everything, we did everything we could legally, we did everything we could by approaching third-party contractors who are experts at this stuff. We had the full cooperation of Apple in terms of what they could do technically, and we still could not get into a phone that belongs to a suspect in a really, really horrible shooting. And if this person was influenced by other people or part of a group of people, we need to know that. Even under these circumstances, we still couldn't get all that data. This is why we need to change the world so that government has a backdoor into phones. So that is, I want to say that their first objective is let's get data on this phone so that we can make this case against this individual, and also make sure that if there's information on that phone that can be used to prevent further violence, we can do that. But there's every single time there's a case like this, it gets put into that file that says the next time we're before Congress or the next time we're trying to, we think that there's an opportunity to sort of twist arms and make this happen. We're going to use this as to cite the legal reasons why the government, we think, has a right to insist that corporations not allow people to have encryption that the government cannot break.
And let's be clear that the government has an incredible amount of data now. like it is like the level at which they can see what we're doing is at a level that has never been in the history of the world. So they have an enormous amount of data, and it's like they went from, in 1990, they had a little 320 by 240 screen. Now they've got a 4K screen, and they've got one pixel that isn't showing up, and they just desperately want that one pixel. And the thing is that it is they have this incredible amount of data. They have, I'm sure that they have all the metadata from that phone, so they know every phone that phone knew from the time it was turned on to the time that that's all there. They have, and we'll notice that the San Bernardino, there was a lot of press about them wanting to get in, and then they got in, and then there wasn't a lot of press about anything that they found, right? So because it didn't turn out to be anything there. Because if you were a terrorist, you wouldn't leave that on your phone. So the thing is that the the problem is that the chances of it really turning out to be there's probably not a lot there is the problem. And the second problem is that most of the data they needed, they have, in metadata. They just don't like the fact that they can't get into these things. And again, as an American society, we make decisions of freedom over top of security all the time. That's why we don't have facial recognition in San Francisco. It's because we've decided there is a lot of places, and I will argue that San Francisco's law...
Well, you're not fingerprinted at birth.
Yeah, but San Francisco's law that says that we can't use facial recognition puts more people at risk than Apple's iPhone block any day of the week. And we've decided that that's acceptable. And I'm not arguing with San Francisco's law, but I'm saying that its impact on people's actual day-to-day security of someone having a chance of being mugged or killed or robbed or whatever, it's much higher when you have facial recognition in San Francisco. They could get to a point where there's very little to no crime if they wanted to turn that on all the way. But so it would be much more secure to have it, but we've decided that people's freedom is more important than that. And that law has way more impact on us on a day-to-day basis than Apple's phone thing.
Yeah, exactly. Just like it would be... It sounds horrific, the idea that government and law enforcement could simply demand to enter your house and look at anything that you have inside that house without a warrant, that they could essentially grab anybody they want to grab without any cause. The reason why they can't do that is because, again, a few hundred years ago, a whole bunch of people decided that would be a bad thing to let the government do. We've just gotten under the thumb of a government that we thought is too powerful, so we're not going to let that happen. And as Alex said, a lot of things would be a lot of the world would be a lot safer if that happened, but the cost would be way too great. Now, I do want to say, again, I try to check my own cynicism, and I'm not describing anybody else's feelings here, but my own. That so you do, a smart criminal covers their tracks. But number one, not everyone is a smart criminal. One of the biggest problems with domestic terrorism is not that there is a huge Hydra-like organization that is making plans and carrying out orders and training people in spycraft. It's that there are people who are releasing videos and creating Facebook channels and Twitter feeds that are trying to influence idiots into doing horrible and destructive things. And those people certainly are going to make mistakes and certainly are going to be leaving data behind. And secondly, even if they don't, you have to search the car. You have to search the house. You have to, even if you don't think anything's going to be there, you have to at least check to see if anything like that got left behind. And that is the sort of thing that I am willing to say that, yep, it would be great if there were a back door into these devices, because it is kind of scary, the idea that I or anybody else could make up these meticulous plans, a beautiful PowerPoint or Keynote spreadsheet, Keynote document that explains exactly how the master plan is going to work to make sure that everybody in my cabal are going to be exactly where they need to be and doing what they need to do. And so long as I encrypt it, I don't have to worry about it. And that's a scary thing. But like Alex says, I believe it's really an important principle. I believe that if we were able to explain to the founders of this country, the people who created the Bill of Rights, that should we just basically create a fundamental statement that says that a citizen of the United States has the fundamental right to keep a secret from the government, I'm sure they would have gone. I'm sure they would have gone all over. They would have been all over it. Say, oh, great, okay, 11th amendment to the Constitution. However, they didn't. So now we have to talk about this as a more not as an abstract principle, but as here is what it's costing us to not have the ability to get into the secrets of individual citizens. It's a principle thing.
And I'm not against surveillance.
The only thing I'd add to that is
sure
that
Go ahead, Renee.
Sorry. I was going to say, the only thing I want to add to that is that for a lot of people, our phones have become our secondary brains. It's the closest thing we have to external cybernetics. And one day that stuff is not going to be so external. And we have to be real careful that we set the precedence for privacy now, because eventually the ability to know everything that we're doing, not just based on everything around us, but a lot of the stuff that's interfacing with us is going to literally feel like Arthur C. Clarke mind reading. And that's where I'm nervous about, because once you make encryption illegal, anything that we do in the future that involves, like Elon Musk and Jeff Hawkins, everyone's making these companies, that stuff is going to need to be protected too. And I'd rather not sign away my rights before I see how far this technology goes.
Anytime you, and I have to say that anytime that you write a contract, or anytime you work out a contract with someone, you don't write it based on how you feel about them right today.
Right.
You write it based on, if you were afraid of where this would go, where do you set the limits? If someone else, like for instance, if I make a contract with another company, I think about, well, if someone bought that company and there's a bunch of people now running it that I don't know, and they're a bunch of rat bastards, will this contract protect me? And that's how you think about that. In the same sense, our government's doing okay. I mean, a lot of people are upset about a lot of things. I get that, but in general, if you've traveled around the world, the country's doing better than most. So it's doing okay. It could get a lot worse. And the thing is that giving up all of this right now is not necessarily, sure, it's working now, but 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when, as Renee said, when we set the precedent of that, we have to be careful about what the power we give the government, and we only have to look at China to see where this, where the end can go. They're about a decade, 2 decades ahead of us, in that surveillance level, and so the issue is, and again, I'm not against surveillance. I'm not against metadata collection. I'm not against all of those things. I think it's the reason that we can walk around in the United States without. I mean, I work in countries where there are security for every house. There is walls with broken glass across the top of them. There is dogs and there's all kinds of things that are required. There's guys at every corner with submachine guns. I work in a lot of places like that relatively often. And so I'm clear of what happens when you can't get that data. And the reason that we don't have that here is because we have that data. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't have any surveillance, and I'm not saying that we should we should box up the NSA or the FBI. I think what they do is why we have the way of life that we have as Americans. But we do have to set limits, and we have to understand, more importantly than anything else, that they can't keep their own secrets. How are they going to keep ours? Creating this back door, forget about whether the government's going to do it. It's all these cities that get shut down because someone broke in. That's NSA code. That's our own code being used against our cities. And so the thing is that was the most important thing that they had, and they couldn't keep it safe. And so why would we think that having a back door isn't going to open something up that is going to be horrible?
Yeah, but what you said about contracts is really spot on, because you never. The thing is, you never. When you're in a place of safety and comfort and security, it's hard to imagine not being in that place of comfort and security. There are things that, when things are stable for a great amount of time, you forget that it's possible for it to destabilize. That I'm only using this as an example. I'm not using this as a political statement or anything, but I would never, if you had asked me 10 years ago that do we need to have a plan in place for if someone if a sitting president is either impeached, removed from office, or elected out of office, or comes to term limits, but that president decides that, well, I'm not leaving because the work that I'm doing here is way too important, I'm going to invalidate the election. I would say, okay, look, that might happen in those lesser countries, but we are a greater nation. No, we're not. It can happen. It happens by degrees, and suddenly you find yourself, what do you mean that we have no way to secure our data from a government that has the ability to simply prosecute any political or thought enemy of the current regime? It could happen definitely within my lifetime, and this is why we need to make that stand for things that are really important.
Folks, we've got a lot more to talk about, but before we get there, I do want to take a quick break to tell you about Health IQ. You're doing everything right for your health today. You exercise 4 or more times per week, and you get a minimum 8 hours of sleep on average. Basically, you're ensuring a longer life, but if you're not planning for the what-ifs of tomorrow, then it's time you do. See, Health IQ uses science and data to secure lower life insurance rates for people like you. You can get $1 million life insurance from $36 a month. The health conscious have overpaid and subsidized those who are less health conscious. It's not a conspiracy. It's just how life insurance works. You might be healthy, but does your insurance company know that? If you're a runner, a cyclist, if you're into CrossFit or another type of athlete, or maybe you're a vegetarian or vegan, well, you deserve to be rewarded for your hard work with more affordable life insurance rates. Physically active people have significantly lower risks for heart disease, for cancer, for diabetes. Health IQ gives you white glove service and walks you through the entire process of applying, and the policy is underwritten by one of the top 30 insurance companies. These savings are exclusive to Health IQ, and you're not going to find them anywhere else. Please note, you must qualify first to get a special rate. It starts with a Health IQ quiz, which is the first scientific way to assess your own health literacy. It's knowledgeable assessment, not self-assessment. They assembled a team of the nation's leading medical, health, and fitness experts to create this cutting-edge analysis. And depending upon your score, as well as other related qualifying factors, you can save up to 41% on your life insurance premiums compared to other providers. There's no commitment, and you'll learn even more about potential opportunities to be rewarded for your commitment to living healthy. So how does this work? Well, let Health IQ's concierge service guide you toward getting the life insurance you deserve. To see if you qualify, you just go to healthiq.com/MacBreak, all spelled out, to take the proprietary Health IQ quiz today. That's healthiq.com/MacBreak. Once you complete the quiz, their team will call to walk you through the process so that you can get the savings you've earned for your healthy lifestyle. That's healthiq.com/MacBreak. And we thank you, Health IQ, for sponsoring this week's episode of MacBreak Weekly. All righty, let's talk about Apple and stock and Apple and earnings and Apple, and this is
evidently they're on the ropes, I hear.
Yeah, they're not doing so hot right now.
Analysts have said they're
Isn't it amazing though that like literally a year ago on January, I think it was January 2nd or 3rd, Tim Cook put out that letter saying that iPhone profits were not what they expected, especially in China, and that for I think the second time in the company's history they were going to restate earnings. And boy, did the doom and gloom set in fast. And then literally 1 year later, to the day, Apple crossed $300 a share for the first time.
For the first time, yeah. I saw you tweeting about this, Renee. That there was that. Oh boy, we're gonna call in with. We're gonna let everybody know that we're probably not going to reach the earnings goals that we had, and now they close north of $300.
And I don't think the stock is like the bellwether for everything. Like it's not like it's an indicator for Wall Street and a couple other things. I don't think it's an indicator for us and the company writ large and where Apple stands and where it's a very different sort of metric. But it does shed light on just how savvy Tim Cook and Luca Maestri have been in navigating not only the headwinds from foreign currency exchange, not only the tariffs which have been hanging over them like the sword of Damocles all year, not only the Chinese market and the blowback from Huawei and all those other stuff, but they've managed to navigate it so well that the stock crossed at a record high just 1 year later. And I think as much as Tim Cook gets grief for not being Steve Jobs, he seldom gets credit for being a really, really good Tim Cook.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I want to talk about there, Renee. You say that, this is not necessarily an indicator for those of us who don't exist in that analyst space. Yeah. Well, there is an indicator that the company is doing well for those of us who exist in that analyst space, and that is that Apple has 9 of the 10 devices of the top spots for mobile device activation in the U.S. over the holiday week. So between, I think it's the 25th, Christmas Day, and the 31st, the eve of the new year, Apple has the 9 out of the 10 top spots. The 10th spot goes to, I think, a Huawei device, or is it Xiaomi? I don't recall what the graph shows. But 9 out of the 10 top devices are iPhone devices. Yeah, that 10th spot is the Xiaomi Mi 4 LTE.
The rest your brand.
Yeah. What's going on there? Top one, of course, is iPhone 11, followed by, I think, of course, the iPhone 10R, and then 7, 8, and so on. That is pretty wild. I mean, I guess it's not wild in the sense that, in my mind, it's to be expected. But I think that when we look at the sort of analyst stock point of view, that can make things a little confusing, a little muddied. And this, to me, is
it's speculation based, right?
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they also made money, like the Samsung and Apple in the US. A lot of people immediately say, but China and yes, there's an entire world out there. All of us have traveled. We all know that. But in the US, according to, again, another metric company, and they can vary widely in the quality of their metrics. But Samsung and Apple were basically the only ones making money again in the US market.
Were there any? I think you were about to say something, Alex. Do you recall what that was?
Sorry. Well, I think all I was going to say is I don't know if I think that Steve Jobs got the company to where it was. I mean, made the turn, built it up, built the products, put that together. I don't think he could have navigated this as well as Tim Cook. Of the challenges that Apple's had in supply and in expansion and dealing with politics. I don't think that Steve would have had any interest in talking to Trump. I think that, he'd be just like, well, we're going to do our thing and they're going to do their thing and I don't want to talk about it.
Just seeing him on Twitter would have been amazing.
Oh my word!
Seeing with the Golden Globes would have been wow. I guess Pixar really is doing that deep fake thing as a live stream.
Yeah.
But exactly. yeah, it's and there's nothing that's more recreational as opposed to practical than talking about what would Steve have done in a certain situation. But I have a hard time thinking that he could have correctly navigated the shift to services as well as Tim had. Because it's not as though they weren't doing any services when he was around. It's not as though that 5 years after he passed, which is usually the time frame which we think about things that Steve probably knew about and had his opinions on. But the idea of let's start our own TV channel. He was big on the intersection between engineering and liberal arts, but I'm not sure if he would have thought that this is part of Apple's focus. I could have seen him.
I think in a lot of ways,
I could have seen him building a separate company for that, but I'm not sure if they would use the Apple brand for it.
I think the Apple Music contract or the Apple Music legal constraints put Steve in handcuffs. He wasn't allowed to do music. He was allowed to distribute it, but he wasn't allowed to until they bought their way out of that. For a long time with the Beatles, they weren't allowed to do their own thing, and they kept on
have to be file maker
negotiating that and so on and so forth. But I think that was one of the things, and I think that it's a mistake. I think one of the things that there was an interview with Jimmy Iovine, I think last week, that talked about the fact that all these streaming services are all commoditized and everything's all, and I do think that Apple should be much more aggressive. And I'm wondering whether their contracts currently with record labels keep them from doing it straight out. But I think that Apple should be, basically building bands up. I don't understand why they don't do exactly what they're doing with Apple TV Plus or with what Netflix does and just start, signing bands directly to Apple Music. I mean, I'm very surprised that they haven't gotten aggressive about that. My only guess is that the contracts that they have with the record labels to distribute the music precludes them from actually getting into the business.
They help with some videos, right? That was one of the stories.
They help with videos.
Some bands make videos.
They also buy exclusives, which the exclusives that they're buying for those essentially pays for the entire production of the record. So those exclusives, when they get like the first 3 weeks of an album, or the first 2 weeks, or a launch, or a month, or whatever, all of those things are helping to make them special at the beginning there, but is not, and I don't think they can make these deals, the new deals with like a Taylor Swift or someone like that, but because they already have a big market, they don't need Apple. But for smaller bands, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to sign them on and put them on as label, as their label, or some kind of exclusiveness that lasts a year or 2 years, and help pay for their. And I think in a lot of ways, it could increase the amount of creativity that we see in the music industry, because you're basically taking away some of the performance needs for the band members as well. In the same way that I think arcade allows a whole set of games that we wouldn't normally see, because you're worried about retail value. When you're trying to build an entire group of things that people are just listening to, I think you could do a lot. And I think that, again, I think both Spotify and Apple are probably limited, which is one of the reasons I think Spotify is going after podcasts in kind of a ham-fisted sort of way.
Very ham-fisted. So speaking of music, go ahead, Andy.
Oh, no. I was going to just amplify Renee's comment that I think that sometimes the stock price, it can be it's the lifeblood of a company. It can sometimes be a liability for a company like Apple, because it creates the expectation among analysts that it has to keep going up. Whatever expectations there is, just meeting the expectation is a sign of trouble. It has to be exceeded. And whereas Apple would have a lot less. Oh my God, why do we have to have a comment on this as a company, that we have to say that oh my God, we only made $1 kajillion when we should have been making a mega kajillion dollars. It's the idea of the health and the prosperity of a company is very much an analog decision, and we don't like to. It's hard to explain an analog thing, but a number is digital. And wait, this number is larger than that number. It should have been this much larger than that number.
Well, and the hard part that all of these Silicon Valley companies have in a very competitive environment between the companies, all in Silicon Valley, is that the stock price holds on to the employees, and if that stock price starts to slide, it becomes, you start losing people. And one thing I've learned over the last decade is how attached those employees are to those stock values. So you can get into a company-wide morass. I think that Apple's a little less susceptible to this, but you can get into a company-wide morass if your stock is falling all the time. People are thinking about it all the time. They're looking at it all the time. They're thinking about something, and it changes the way that they think. And so a lot of what an executive team has to do is figure out how that stock price either stays where it's at or slowly moves up at each. And this is why it's so important. This is why you do stock buybacks, is not so that investors get money back. It's the primary investors of stock buybacks benefit that the company's worried about is their 100,000 employees or 50,000 employees that all have stock options that will be upset if those things start to slide backwards, and then they'll go work for Facebook or they'll go work for Google, and so they're always, a lot of employees are looking at that kind of growth, the growth of their value as a key piece of why they're there.
That's how they buy their houses. It's all the RSUs and things like that. It's immensely valuable.
So speaking of music, you know what my AirPods are missing? They're missing.
What do they smell like,
left one.
They are missing. Oh no, not the blueberries. They are missing a little poo emoji on the front of them.
I've always wanted one on.
Oh no.
Yeah. So
Are you reordering?
You know what? Maybe I will. Darn it.
You can just order the case. You can just order the case by itself. You don't have to order the.
Andy is disappointed.
No.
He's like, where have we gone?
There's nothing that. There is nothing that illustrates for me like the cultural generation gap. For me, then. If people think that the poo emoji is like funny and they like it, it brings them joy, I'm glad it brings them joy. But for me, it's like, why do I go to like why do I go to a Walgreens and I can see like a chocolate specialty treat that's shaped like crap? Why would I don't understand the youths of today and their flared trousers and their bebop music.
Imagine it's bacon, Andy. Just imagine it's a bacon emoji. there, and then everything will be right in the world again.
But bacon and feces are two totally different things.
Just pick any emoji that's near and dear to your heart.
That's true. Yeah.
And put those on your AirPods.
What's interesting is I kind of thought that this is a little off topic, but I kind of thought that the poo emoji was a thing everybody liked. In my not that everybody liked, but I mean in my generation,
everybody poops, but not everybody likes the poop emoji.
In my generation and younger, I thought that was the case, and I was at a holiday party recently where they did a Secret Santa with ornaments, and someone had made one of those like bacon clay and bake type ornaments that they made out of, I don't know what goes into it, salt and flour and stuff, and baked it and then painted it brown, and it was the poo emoji. And everybody was like, "Oh, that's so awesome! You got the poo emoji!" And the person who got it, who was around about my age, was so devastated and disgusted and angry almost that she had gotten this poo emoji. And so it kind of like reset my brain there a little bit, where not everybody's into the poo emoji, and that's totally fine. But all of this is to say that Apple has updated its sort of font library, I guess, to offer engravings of certain emoji on AirPods cases. So before you could get your name and you could use normal letters, but now there are some emoji that you can get, including a dragon emoji, a smile. I think the peace sign is also available. I love you is available. A fist, and of course the ever-loved ghost emoji.
And of course, as you know, there are plenty of services that can do much more interesting things on,
as far
as laser engraving. I would never get any of those. I'd be like, I'm going to design something, and then I'm going to go have someone
get your own custom design.
Why get a zucchini emoji when you can get the real thing?
Oh my God!
Subtly be damned.
Where are the air horns? That's all that there is to say about that. Other than, I'm curious, the engraving option has been around for some time for different devices. What is the last Apple product, if you've ever gotten engraving, what is the last Apple product that you had engraved? Renee, I'm starting with you. I have never had one engraved because I always think that I'm eventually going to pass it down to a family member or friend, and I don't want to mark it up and they have to inherit it. So I always keep it as pristine as I can just in case I have to give them away, or when I give them away. The last one I had engraved was an iPad Air. No, was the 2 an iPad Air? Whatever was the second generation of iPad. I had just a regular iPad 2, yeah. iPad 2, that one I had engraved with my name on the back. The coolest one I ever saw was Christina Warren's iPad, and it said C-Max iPad on the back of it. But I haven't gotten anything engraved since then for the same reason, Renee. Andy Anatko, have you ever engraved an Apple product?
No, but I just tend to if you go on to eBay, there are people with really, really good vinyl cutters, and they have like symbols for everything. So I tend to get a Rebel Alliance symbol on the sized and colored the way colored red and put it on that thing. It really is important for things like AirPods because it's you're going out to lunch with people, you're hanging out with people, or you're having a guest over for the weekend or something. And suddenly, like a day later, you put in your iPad, you're about to put in your iPods, you realize that, I don't want to be gross, but this does not look like my earwax. We must have switched earpods. So you need to have some sort of identifying mark. I'm horrified now, but I don't want to think about comparing earwax. You don't. Well, you need. I'm saying you should look at your earpods before you insert them, because maybe you need to clean house in there. Get a wooden toothpick and just clean house. That's all I'm saying. Mine are always immaculate because I'm constantly grossed out by that. Alex Lindsay, what's the last device you had engraved, if you have? Never. And same thing is that I usually I'm the first person to own it, but I will definitely not be in my company. It's it would go out to other people, or in my family it'll go out to other people, but I'm usually not going to be the last one to have it, so I don't want to put a mark on it. And also most of my at least my phones go into, this is a case, and then there's a screen protector. They're kind of like in their own little cocoon, so there's not really any reason for me to put anything on it because it's going to be packed into something else anyway. Is that a battery case? It's not. This is a wallet.
Oh.
So this is.
Oh, that's a nice. Oh, magnets.
Yeah. So
and it doesn't affect
did you
the magnetic stripe?
It doesn't, and not only that, you can roll it over like this, and then it holds.
Well, now that's pretty cool.
This is the scene or the Vena. I think Vena. I think I recommended this at some point, but this is what I found. This is a complete side thing, but I think I talked about this before. What I found is I lose my wallet or I lose my phone, but I never lose both.
Right.
So by putting them both together, it also limits how many credit cards you have, because I have my driver's license and 2 credit cards, and that's it.
And it doesn't look like a typical wallet card, because I don't like wallet case. I mean, wallet case. It doesn't look like a typical wallet case, because I usually don't like those. But
I had one that was a wallet case, and when I was in Nigeria, I set it down for a minute, and a guy walked over and he said, "Don't ever do this again." He handed it to me. He stole one of my cards.
Oh.
so it was funny. It was a good. I was impressed by the style in that process. But
don't ever do this.
I'm curious.
He told me, he handed me back my phone and said, "Don't ever do this again. Like, don't leave your thing out." But he taught me a lesson by taking one of the cards. So anyway, it was hard to get back into the hotel. So anyway, but the so that's I don't. I put a lot on my laptops. I generally have some kind of case. I think in my most recent laptop had Lego case on the back that I can do things with, and I usually like to do that and then put stickers all over them. I mean, I don't like marking up my my stuff in general. I don't have any tattoos either.
In case you have to pass them out,
and I rarely wear shirts with logos. So like it's kind of like I'm kind of a non-markup kind of guy.
He's not branded.
Yeah.
Mikah, I'm curious, did your curiosity get ahead of you, or your germophobia, and did you end up smelling for the blueberry
I never
AirPod odor or
smelled.
not?
I saw it, and I just didn't want to. Honestly, Renee, I don't like being disappointed, and I was worried if I smelled them, they weren't going to smell like blueberries, and so I have not, and I'm not. I can't do it. I
smelled mine, and they smelled like ozone. So I think you were smart.
Yeah, I don't want to be disappointed.
By the way, toothbrushes work incredibly well for cleaning out the AirPods.
And can I offer?
Don't use the one you're using for your teeth.
I was about to say whenever I toothbrushes are really great for cleaning lots and lots of stuff. But that's why I do take a little hacksaw and I cut the handle in half to as part of the visible user interface that this is not sanitary. This has been used on bicycle chains and things much worse than bicycle chains.
I have other needs for toothbrushes with metal that requires lots of getting into lots of little details to clean something, and so I have lots of toothbrushes.
There are also
you can buy them by the 100 on Amazon, of course, for like nothing.
Yeah, and Amazon also. I mean, every place does. I've found that the devices specifically made for hearing aids, for cleaning hearing aids, are great. Yeah. They usually have a wire loop on one side and a brush on the other, and the wire loop is good for
scraping.
Yes. Scraping. We'll leave it at that. That is a great way to put that.
It is useful to do it often, because otherwise stuff goes through the screen, which is what the thing that I loved about the Etymotics was the Etymotics has a removable filter. So you could basically, in the Etymotic headsets, you could pull it open and you have this little screw tip device and you pull out the filter and replace it.
Oh, nice.
It's so much nicer. Oh. And I kind of, that's my one thing about the Etymotics a couple things. They're great headsets.
By the way, that case, it's only $30, which is a pretty good price. I was expecting it to be a lot more. So now I'm going to think about getting one of those for sure. Let's see.
It's actually a really good drop case, too. I drop my phone a lot.
Ooh, nice. Apple is, possibly, it's rumors, you know how these go, possibly working on a gaming Mac in 2020. So I saw an article recently where there was an argument being made against using the base model Mac Pro, which of course is Apple's latest.
Yeah, Quinn from Snazzy Labs.
Renee knows.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, you might not want to use the base model Mac Pro for gaming. What does it mean then, Renee, for Apple to be working on a gaming-focused Mac that comes at a reasonable price? And is it going to sell in the same way that gaming PCs do?
So I don't think this is a real thing. I'll give you a couple of reasons why I don't. So it's not a well-sourced rumor to start with, but also when you think about what a gaming machine means, the rumor itself is like, I started reading, I was like, oh, maybe they just got confused and Apple's finally working on the X Mac, which is the smaller, more affordable tower Mac, and people can throw their own graphics cards in it. They can upgrade the RAM, because that's the essence of gaming. When people build a gaming PC, it's they want to put their Chrome and their Neon on it. That's the whole spirit of it. But the rumor was like, no, it's going to be a MacBook or an iMac. I'm like, that's kind of the opposite of what you'd expect from this rumor. And then it just seemed to go downhill from there, because what does a gaming Mac mean? It probably means NVIDIA graphics, and Apple and NVIDIA still aren't on very good terms, but it also means a huge gaming like culture. And that just doesn't exist on the Mac. Apple can build, like Apple could make an Asus style, Alienware style, I forget what HP's is called. They could make one of those machines, but you'd have to go into boot camp in order to play any games on it. So the whole thing just, if I were to like do the Amazon thing and make the final press release for what Apple would announce as a gaming Mac, and then work my way back to the product, the current rumor has absolutely none of the elements that I would expect to see to get to that end point.
And I feel like if you want that performance at this point with, you can get an outboard GPU. And I'm not sure, how much else, what else you need. And I did find it funny in that article, they said the ATI, not the ATI cards, but the AMD cards are not built for gaming. I'm like, what? like that's what they were built for. That's why we hate them. I was like as a professional who uses GPUs. I mean, NVIDIA was the hardcore, heavy lifting GPU that happens to now work really well with games. But the ATI/AMD boards, that's what they were built for. That's the problem with the way that they process the graphics. And so, I was just...
Well, the gamers say the same thing. The gamers say they're better for number crunchers. Number crunchers say they're better for gamers, and both just want NVIDIA GPUs because they're really general purpose GPUs now.
Yeah.
It's
weird. It's weird because gamers at this point, they know exactly what they want. They know exactly how specifically a system has to perform. So the idea at this point of creating a brand new gaming system in a world, in an ecosystem like Apple's, where no, you don't get to swap out the interconnects. No, you don't get to have your own cooling system. No, you don't get to swap in to fix this or tweak that. Yeah, I don't. That's a rumor that's definitely on the
PC.
And admittedly, I mean,
exactly.
That's actually one of the problems. When I heating, the heat dissipation is a big deal. Like for instance, when I do my photogrammetry, I have to be careful on my iMac. If I do it there, I'm now doing most of it on a PC, but it will overheat and literally shut my computer down.
Wow!
It turns out.
I saw Justine doing your file on her video, Alex.
I've been like working on ways to put like cooling on the back of the iMac, trying to dissipate it or whatever. But the iMac, because the problem is that it's sustaining a full CPU load for 3 days.
Whoa!
And so these are the big calculations, not the quick kind of like, is this going to work? But like if I'm really trying to get all the data out of the photos that I'm using, it just runs literally at the very top of all the processors for 3 days.
3 days.
Somewhere between 2 and 3 days, if I'm not careful, it will just stop. And I come back and the computer's restarted, and I'm like, what happened?
Oh, man.
It took me a while because I kept on going away and coming back. Like I would do it when I go on a trip. I come back and I'm like,
made
what
it quit?
Did we lose power? And then I put a UPS on it, and then I realized that no. And then I had to put like a little camera on it to see like what happened.
My goodness.
And watch the heat and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's what caused it.
Yeah, no, I was watching Justine's video where she showed your photogrammetry on the Mac Pro, and I think it took her a day to get through those files.
Yeah, Justine was like talking about how do I push the Mac Pro, and I was like, I'll send you some files. Like
I can help you out with that.
And then she was rendering her video at the same time.
If you looked at her tweet, it was just like, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. 28 CPUs just at full capacity. And I asked her, I was like, did you see the GPU get hit every once in a while? Because there's only certain calculations in a photogrammetry that hit the GPU. And she's like, oh yeah, it maxed out both of them. It just goes whoop. At certain times, it's a great real world Cinebench.
Wow. So speaking of earlier, I think it was Andy, you were talking kind of about how some of us don't understand what the youths are up to. I think one of the things that I see across different generations, but I've never been able to myself understand, is taking a device like an iPhone and sticking a big old wart on the back of it, known as a pop socket. I'm happy that, oh boy, John's got a pop socket. Listen.
Yeah, you can educate us because I don't understand it either. I'm like, what?
If you've got a socket you want to pop on the back of your device, that's fine by me.
Put an eye out with that.
I just don't. Yeah, don't put an eye out with your pop socket. I just don't get it. I don't get it. And so this is the first time that I have actually considered, because I don't know about y'all, but I'm kind of the type of person who I want to be, if I can't be fully sympathetic, I want to be empathetic. I want to understand why. And so
you want to know the pop socket.
I want to know the pop socket. I want to know what love is. I want you to show me. And so I have never been able to do the pop socket thing because I want to be able to charge my device with my wireless chargers that I have. I'm all in on wireless charging now. That took me a while as well. And this hasn't been possible. Well, PopSocket has now created a way for you to charge even with your PopSocket plugged in. Essentially, they've made a donut charger. So the
PopSocket docket?
The PopSocket docket, pop, lock, and drop it. You just drop your PopSocket onto the donut, and it fits nice in the middle and around the outside with, you know, whatever fun. I see like a rainbow fairy sparkle donut and a nice minimalist.
I'm so hungry now.
Black lines donut. And please don't take a bite of this one, Renee. I don't think it would be good for you. Although it could maybe recharge you. Anyway, this may be the first time that I can actually sort of try to live the life of a pop socketer and see if there's something to it.
Is the rocket bigger than the ring? Like I remember Kevin Mitchelluk, our good friend Kevin Mitchelluk, he had those rings on the back of his phones all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what's better, the socket or the ring.
So the ring can lay more flat. Whereas the pop socket, if you put your phone down, it rocks up and down because the socket doesn't go completely flat.
Yeah. It's a stand for your...
It also works as a stand, yes. But
you don't put it straight down. You put it...
Oh, I see what he's saying. Okay, so Karsten is pointing out that you would never lay it straight down on the back of the device because you can use it to sort of prop up your phone, which makes sense. But the great thing about the pop socket is that you sort of slide your fingers around the socket, and it can be held there really nice. So it adds some balance to, you know, you're holding the device while you're carrying it around. The thing is, I have monster hands, and so I don't really need a pop socket to have, even with the iPhone 11 Pro Max. It's not a problem for me to be able to hold this device with the
Looks like an iPhone SE in your hands.
Yeah, it is, exactly. But Lori Gill, on the other hand, I could see why a pop socket would work for her. So anyway, my point is, given the fact that there's now this donut out there, the pop socket, drop it, lock and pop it, work it, make it, move it, you know, you get it. I am considering going...
No, that's voguing.
You're right. You're right.
I thought it was popping and locking, but it was actually voguing.
For me, it's just jeans pockets. I can't put it in a jeans pocket.
Oh, yeah.
Like I just, you know, I slide mine into my pocket all the time, and I'm just like,
John?
you know,
You can, but it's not polite.
I don't know.
Is that a pop? Never mind.
No, I put it in my pants and my jeans all the time. It's not that bad, honestly. Like if you have it like closed like this, if you have out all the way, obviously you're not going to put it in your pocket. But I mean, it's not too intrusive.
Can you bring it over here? I want to see how flat it lays.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me walk with the board.
Yeah, I'm asking the technical director who's running our board.
There won't be any switching for a minute.
So yeah, we'll just stay.
They're
on
called Pods, and they're taking the youth culture by storm.
And this is why Carson's off to the side. I'm TDing now. He can do this for me.
Let's go.
Nah, well, good luck. But yeah, no, you can use it as a stand. That's the main reason why I have it. Because if you want to watch a video when you're like at a table, you just pop the socket out, lay it down on the table, and it acts as a little nice stand. It's not too bad.
It still sticks out pretty far, though. Can you do a close-up of me, please?
It's not that far, I would say.
That would drive me crazy.
That's like an Oreo cookie on the back.
I'm just too old.
Let's see.
It's
not a double stuff.
Yeah, then lay it on the table. Pop it out and lay it on the table.
I want it because we can have the wide shot here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not that bad.
So this is nice.
Is that a nice angle? And
let's go ahead. Let's put that next to it.
Can you use it to open the small door on the back of the iPhone? Because it looks like a handle.
So this is Alex's case that I'm probably going to be ordering that has
you can't use it won't charge, by the way. We're talking about your charging.
Oh, no. You can't do wireless charging with that.
I don't do wireless charging.
Oh.
I'm a little surprised that your pop socket is not promoting your allegiance to any one specific K-pop band, however.
Yeah, that is what. So that's so funny that you mentioned that, Andy. At that same holiday party.
There you go. Very good.
Where I saw the Christmas ornaments thing, there was someone there with a pop socket that had a the face of a K-popper on the back of it. I don't know if they're called K-poppers. It was a K-pop
BTS,
socket.
EXO, 101, NXT, 17.
I think it was
Be specific.
Intel NXT.
BTS.
Yeah, was the one.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was into BTS once. I mean, it's a great starter boy band if you're getting into K-pop. I mean, but once you discover this, what the Stray Kids are all about, I mean, it's.
See, this is
So
what
you're
I'm
saying
talking
you
about.
watched BTS during the New Year's Eve special in New York City, Andy?
No, I'm saying that while we're talking about it, I Googled for a list of popular K-pop boy groups.
Bravissimo. I love it. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying I
I'm
can't
being
wait to be
disruptive.
part.
I'm sorry.
I love it. I can't wait
Leo's
to be part of
running
the
back
pop
from
socket.
Las Vegas going, what is MacBreak Weekly about
We're
this week?
talking about BTS.
For some reason, I just want to say pop sockets.
Get me my hover chair.
By the way, that rainbow unicorn sprinkle is actually called Cosmic Cloud, not whatever it was that I said. Anyway, point is, I will report back at some point in the future because I'm thinking about pop socketing. Because the one thing that I do like too, along with the ability to sort of fling my phone around and have it stay where it is the ability to use the other accessories that they have. So, for example, in your car, you can easily dock it, pop socket and dock it.
So this one,
You're gonna
because
rock
it's
the
metal
pop
in the
sock
back,
dock?
I got a magnetic in my car, and so I just like
You can
snap
stick
it and just snap it up there.
Nice.
So other than the wireless charging, it's pretty much the solve.
And right now I have a Mophie dock in my car that will wirelessly charge my phone. And so that's not going to work if I've got the pop socket drop it. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm curious about it though. And now there is an opportunity to wirelessly charge with the PopPower. And I find it fascinating the way that they try to work on different integrations. And I think that Mophie also partnered with, it was either Mophie or it was, oh goodness, there's another popular case maker that make those horrible cases that are thick. OtterBox, thank you. That it may have partnered with PopSocket, one of the two, to make a case that has it.
They're awesome. It's like the first time you drop a phone on a 100-year-old tiled floor. it becomes less ugly as every time the more you use your phone.
That makes sense. Yeah. One of the other things I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if it's in our document, Karsten, so John, get ready. I'll post it in the chat so you have a link to it. I found this fascinating that we saw some news about this, that Apple was introducing a new little offshoot of its Made for iPhone program that would allow you to use flashes and strobes that are synced with the flash on your camera. And Anker is one of the first companies to come out with one. They have an LED flash that plugs in to the lightning cable on your iPhone and then syncs with the flash on the iPhone to provide even more lighting. So this is the first one that I know of that provides the actual Made for iPhone certification and will allow you to integrate with the iPhone camera app and third-party camera apps as well. And they think they include a little diffuser if you want to provide one as well. So be on the lookout for this.
That's going to be so cool. But not only for people who just like do a lot of Instagram stuff, but also the more you treat an iPhone camera as a real camera, the more you get results that are just like a real camera. And being able to provide a little bit of extra illumination as a flash is the missing link. So that's such a cool development. I wonder what the discussion was like inside of Apple, like whether this was something that had been gestating for a while, but just was waiting for to free up enough personnel that they could actually develop and implement it, or whether it was one of those, that's so obvious, why didn't we think of this 3 years ago? Great, do it.
Yeah, I'm happy that they are doing it now, though, for sure.
So if you're a security guard at any sort of a museum, be prepared now for a new onslaught of sir. I'm sorry, we don't allow any lights in the museum. Thank you very much.
But this is an external. No, we especially don't allow.
No. That means that the rest of us now have to be prepared for, like, Museum of Fine Arts fail. Fascist guard makes me stop Instagramming. Like, oh man.
This should be interesting, and I don't know yet if the spec that's provided allows for devices that aren't actually connected via Lightning.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the Lightning. It would be interesting to see a product that had the Lightning go to a typical TTL connect. Like not TTL connection, but typical connection to flashes. Like that's what you really want. Is you just want a connector that's going to go and talk to existing flashes.
Yeah, your actual.
That would be the bridge that would let you just use anything you wanted, and that would make it a lot easier.
Yeah, but can you imagine how I imagine, I guess, if you just keep the shutter open for a 60th of a second, synchronization won't be a big problem. But I wonder if even timing it to within 1/60th of a second, they're making sure that you're popping the flash while the shutter is open without having to keep it open for a second. I bet that's a non-trivial problem. So I hope I get to read about how people are solving that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll have to keep an eye now that this is out and we've got, sort of our first companies releasing products. That idea of having it go Lightning to this, thing that communicates with your actual flashes, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Something to keep an eye out for sure.
I have a quick but unrelated question, Mikah.
Oh, I love unrelated questions.
So the New York Times is reporting that Sonos is suing Google and Amazon basically for ripping off their home speaker tech, but not Apple. And is that because they kind of feel bad enough about the HomePod? They don't want to pile on, or is it just different technology? I don't know. I just thought it'd be fun to ask.
Yeah. So can you give a little bit more info about the actual lawsuit? What is the claim there?
Sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say that they're not suing Amazon right now because they only have enough money to sue Google and not Amazon. They'll sue as soon as they're done with Google. They'll move to Amazon. So I'm sure they'll get to Apple.
Oh.
And there's no more intimidating phone call if you're a lawyer for Google that says that a small company with a very, very, very small legal fund wants to try to soak you for a big, big settlement. That's like,
is it a
oh
collect
my God,
call, Alex? Andy, is that what you're getting at? Was the call collect?
I think it's going to be, hey, Jason, go empty out the vending machine on the first floor. Whatever is in there, that's what we're going to offer.
Sorry. I kind of like, Renee, your take on things. As much as I enjoy the HomePod that I have, when I'm thinking about where I'm going next, if Apple released a soundbar, hands down, I would get a soundbar from Apple. I would love to have a soundbar made by Apple. But where the space in which I exist currently in my home, there is one HomePod Apple, device, and the rest are Echo speakers of different sorts. And so I don't really sort of fall into that camp. I'm not a big audiophile or anything like that. And as far as I've seen, and of course this is just my own anecdotal stuff, my friends, my family have never shown an interest in the sort of high-end HomePod versus something that is more within their budgets in the Amazon Echo range. And so I find
the chip is going to make it all work together, Mikah. That wonderful chip alliance is going to just solve everything any day now. Oh my gosh.
By the way, I'm the only one that's pronouncing it by its full given Catholic name, which is PChoip, because it is Project Connection. I don't remember even now what it's called actually, but PChoip, the
Connected Home over Internet Protocol.
Thank you.
Micah, are you talking about the baptism name or its confirmation name?
I'm talking about the baptism name. Yeah.
Okay, so it could be the confirmation could still be Loyola or something like that.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm sorry, you awakened my Catholic upbringing. It's like, finally I can use some of this stuff that I.
What other questions would you like?
Going to mass every Sunday instead of just like reading comics at home with my dad. It's paying off finally.
Let me know if there's anything else I can ask to let you bring up your Catholic upbringing.
I am kind of looking forward to all of this kind of finding its way to something that actually works. I mean, I have as someone who owns I think 14 Sonos amps.
Oh my God!
Because they go to a lot of speakers in the house, and every room's got its own amp, and they're all in one server room, but they all go out to everywhere that they need to go in the garden and stuff like that. And so, it's chaos. Like it worked at one point a couple of years ago, but it's just like it's chaos. Like half of them work, and then the other half don't work, and you reset it, and then it bricks it, and then you're trying to figure out why, and then you're it is, and every time there's an update to something, you just know that it's not going to work. And so I think that part of Sonos's problem is I can see why they're as an owner, I can see why they want people to buy the new ones at 30% off and then brick the ones that they have, like just kill them, because the ones that they have are not working. And I think that a lot of the issue there is really that everybody's got all these weird, all of them are just this weird cobbled together. We figured it out on our own.
Right.
And finding something that's unified that just says, okay, this is how we're going to do all of this and make this all work. And hopefully it'll be IPv6, not IPv4. Yeah. We can only hope that they'll move forward. So, but I think that moving to something that is just normal and that we can just have everybody kind of live in for a while would be great. But otherwise, I have to admit, as a homeowner that has a lot of tech and a lot of wire conduits going through most of the house, I'd love to say that I did that, but there was a CTO that owned the house before me for a big company.
Oh, nice.
And so I bought into it. Like I walked into the server room and I saw all those Sonuses and I was like, "Is that come with the house?" Because that sells me on the house, you know. And so anyway, so they did all the work for me, but I'm now just kind of waiting. You know, like I have to admit, I have what I have, and I'm just going to keep waiting until. I mean, my this year project is going to be to pull out all the copper and put it all in fiber, but that's about it. You know, like and then I'm just going to wait for everything else to kind of sort its way out.
We always have to appreciate that the value that Apple brings to almost any product is always how well the damn thing works. That you can, and certainly the HomePods, I don't think the sound is that great, mostly because of the size. I wish it worked with more stuff, but I also have I very much like my Google Home speakers. I've got a pair of the big Google Home Maxes in the bedroom, but man alive, it just the Chromecast just does not work the way that AirPlay works. Or if I see an AirPlay button on a phone and I'm trying to talk to anything that's AirPlay compatible, I'm used to it simply working. Whereas with Chromecast, it's like, okay, now is this an AIFF or is this another format? Okay, no, it's not going to work that way. Okay, so what? Oh dear, why is this speaker keep disconnecting and reconnecting? Why is this saying that I can't find this device on the? It gets in the way of wanting to sit and relax and listen to music. And sometimes I really do think that I kind of would much rather have speakers that are way more expensive than what I'm paying for what I've got now, that aren't quite as good sounding. But if I pick up my phone or my laptop and I press a button saying, please make soothing music now, soothing music happens now. And that's what Apple does well.
I have to say, I have a HomePod in my kitchen, and it's just sounds great. I mean, and I think that part of it is the calculations that they're doing. The kitchen is particularly a lot of hard surfaces and a harder thing to, especially stick it in the corner. And I've had all of them, all of the different smart speakers in that kitchen, and it's night and day as far as I'm concerned, as far as the quality. Now I haven't used the Google, the newer, bigger ones. So I haven't gone head to head with that. And then I have a lot of them. I have the Google Home somewhere else, and I have the Amazon. I have every size of Amazon with screens, without screens, floating around, and so it's not one or the other. But when we want to listen to music, while cooking or whatever, we just use the HomePod.
Yeah.
Well, folks, it is the break time as this show is almost over, but there are more places to enjoy the content we put out, and in fact, after this show, you can catch me over on iOS Today. I got to hang out with Rosemary Orchard again. Yes, I had her back on the show because she absolutely killed it last time.
She's awesome.
She's so awesome. And this time we talked about habit tracking apps. Yes, it is the new year. And yes, some of you may have made New Year's resolutions, or maybe you're looking at other ways to stick to different habits and projects that you're working on. And so we went all in on a bunch of different habit tracking and resolution tracking apps, some apps that are like mini virtual life coaches, and everything in between, a way to even get a better understanding and an overview of your life and your happiness in different categories, which I thought was really fantastic. Before we talked about the news in iOS, iPadOS, tvOS, macOS, well, not macOS, that's for this show, and CarPlay, all that and more over on iOS Today. So be sure to check it out. Be sure to subscribe for all that great content. And of course, Leo Laporte will be back next time for iOS Today. Okay, folks, it is time for our picks of the week. And we're starting with Alex Lindsay.
So I'm doing a repick. So I'm picking it again because it's so great.
Okay.
So
I'm down.
So I'm picking Shadow Draw again, and I picked it because I enjoyed it. I'm picking it again because my daughter just loves it, and my 10-year-old daughter likes to draw, and she loves this little, like, basically what Shadow Draw does is it draws a line and has you follow along. And so you're actually following artists in their process of drawing. So you're learning how they draw by like, here's a line, do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. And so it shows you the structure and the approach of how to draw. And there's two things about it. I mean, the first reason that I picked it was because I feel like there's a future, this is part of an education future that's coming, which is that you're going to be able to actually interactively follow along with an example of something that teaches you important skills on how to do it. I mean, a lot of us want to do step-by-steps. This is kind of the next generation of step-by-step, of teach you how to do something by actually having you do it right over top of the person doing it. So I think that it's important from a technology perspective. But the reason I decided to bring it up again was I was just over the Christmas break, got to watch my daughter constantly on it, sitting there going from one picture to another and following along and getting better at it. And then all of her drawing getting better. She basically, the two apps that she probably spends the most time in is Procreate and Shadow Draw. So she's playing in Shadow Draw, and then she's doing her own stuff in Procreate, and then she makes music on GarageBand. so that's kind of her little world. And GarageBand on her iPad, and then she's using Logic on. She's only 10 years old, so we decided to get her into Logic on the Mac. So anyway, so she's cooking. She's
are you afraid that she's going to start like out hustling you for clients soon?
Oh yeah. Hey, I'm just looking at labor laws when we put her in, and when we activate the asset, So anyway, so she's but
honey, I'm so proud of you, which is why I'm going to have to start charging you rent per square footage as commercial space for your bedroom and your end of the couch.
Yeah. Wow, that takes me back.
But just watching how her skill, yeah. Just watching how her skills have jumped dramatically going through that process. It reminds me of things like ZBrush. One of the big things that ZBrush had a long time ago was being able to kind of follow along and do stuff. And I think that more applications need to think about whether this is just how to draw, but more applications need to think about this kind of follow through rather than watching a video about how to do something. Actually drive the app so that I'm following along the steps within the app and doing those. I think is a powerful nomenclature.
Very neat. Renee Ritchie, what have you got for us?
So mine is just a little bit of fun. If you're not familiar with, sorry, let me just go back for a second. If you're not familiar with Timothy Buck, he's a really cool member of the Apple community. He does a lot of really cool stuff. And he and Alyssa, and I don't have her last name in front of me, so I apologize, have put out a new sticker pack called Decline Stickers, which is hand-drawn, just nope, let's not, can we not, sort of just fun ways to hard nope anything that anybody might message your way. And it struck me at a time when I needed a laugh, but also when I was reminded of the importance of having strong boundaries and strong fences. And I just thought, what a wonderful thing to share with
I
with
love
everyone
this
here.
Because
is there an Android version of this perchance?
I'm getting this right.
It'll work on your iPad.
and is there a sticker for I'm just not in a communicating mode right now? If you if you give me an hour to get used to the idea of talking to somebody, I'll be right on it.
Gross no. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can file a feature request. Gross no, so is a good one for me.
That's fantastic.
I want to just put that on every Twitter thing that's in my feed some mornings when I wake up.
I'm not verbal yet. After coffee, please.
Honored but can't. Yeah. So
honored
good.
but can't. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah.
I know what you did.
Not silly. These are great. Well, and Renee, all jokes aside, you did include some very good points there. Georgia Dow is a strong proponent of the idea of setting boundaries that are important for you, and has kind of taught me that in a way. Yeah. And I really, I think it's important, and I think it's something that a lot of us don't pay attention to or don't give importance to, that needs to be placed there. That sometimes you do need to set boundaries and say, I'm drawing the line here. This is not something that I can do right now, or what have you. And when you need that reminder, this little app that has a little bit of humor to it, as well as that ability to set some boundaries, is kind of neat.
One thing I'll add is if you are in a sticker mode, you can also pick up the Mandalorian sticker pack, which is just absolutely delightful. When you don't want to hard nope stuff, but you want to have a little fun with it, this is the way.
This is the way. I got that as soon as I saw it was available. You better believe. My baby Yoda. All right, Andy Notko, what is your pick?
My pick is a generalized pick. This seems to be a good year to try to get into high resolution music files, because this is the idea of the music that you're streaming. Obviously, it's highly compressed. They throw out a lot of the information that's in the original track. Even if you're like me and you buy CDs to get the much higher resolution, there is another quantum step above that's available in terms of getting an uncompressed digital music file that is much closer to the amount of information that was inside the studio master. And believe it or not, HD music has been around for decades. I think Sony and Philips came out with a high-resolution CD of trying to sell you a high-resolution CD and high-resolution CD players, but that laid the groundwork. But the thing is, now you don't need a special player, you don't need special headphones, you don't need a special digital to audio converter. You can just download an unlocked, non-copy protected, high-resolution audio file in a standard format that iTunes can understand, or whatever your music player or music library can understand, and it will just plain work. And you can dip your toe in pretty inexpensively. The first album that I bought was the newly remastered version of the Beatles' Abbey Road, because it's one of my favorite albums ever. Also, I'm really familiar with it, and I felt as though I was not going to be wasting $20 on it. If I'm going to waste $20 on an experiment, at least I'll have this. And I'll be darned, I really could tell the difference between my lossless CD digital rip, so the CD quality, and this new quality. So the best way to put it is that whereas on the CD, when Ringo hits the cymbal, my mind and my awareness says, okay, that is a cymbal, something. So that's a cymbal hit. Whereas HD tracks, when I'm just listening to my like $60, $80 Sony headphones, over-the-ear headphones here, what you hear is a wooden drumstick hitting a disc of metal, and then as a result, a vibration propagating throughout the cymbal. So you really do. It's not as big as the difference between if you're old like me, and not everybody on this panel, you remember what it was like when you went from like cassettes to CDs, and suddenly, wow, there's no background noise, wow, there's no hiss, and wow, all this other stuff. It's not as dramatic as that, but it's very real. And if you are, particularly if you're like me and you're already in the habit of, my most favorite albums, I will buy a CD. And for my most favorite creators, I will even pay $15 to $20 for the CD rather than simply waiting on eBay for someone to have it for $3 used. It's very much worth your time. And so now my plan is to not necessarily go through. I really can't afford to go throughout my entire library and replace every single one of my favorite albums, even just my favorite albums, with these $17 to $25 HD versions of those albums. However, going forward, there are two releases coming up this month that I was really looking forward to, and now I've canceled my CD pre-orders on Amazon because I'm going to be buying them in high definition when they come out. Now, I will also, I will say this, not for everybody. If you love streaming music, you're going to find it's kind of like a bummer to now have to once again find a place to store music files, to say nothing of the fact that you are going to have so little space on your phone for these enormous files. They are compressed, even though they're lossless, but they're many times bigger than what a 320K like compressed version would be. So that's probably going to be out as well. But if you are like me, where I already transitioned from streaming to I want to have my own curated library of complete lossless CDs. I have after several years, I now have every single CD I've ever owned, and now everyone I've bought in the past 3 years on a server in high resolution. So it's a very, very easy thing to suddenly say that, okay, now the files the FLAC files I'm going to be copying onto my server are now going to be huge and more expensive, but much more detailed, as opposed to something that I bought for $1 at the local library. If it's all, but I just want to say that you don't when you do a Google search, you're going to say, oh well, of course we tested this out on my cheap $2,000 headphones, but I felt as though I didn't really feel the presence in the studio space until I switched from my $600 digital audio converter to the $2,000 one. I know I shouldn't have cheaped out like that in the beginning. No, don't worry. If you just on my 3-year-old phone, just with these $60 to $80 headphones, I definitely felt the difference. And I'm also certain that in the coming years, at some point, I'm probably going to upgrade my speakers. I'm probably going to upgrade my headphones. At that time, I will appreciate it even more. So definitely something to take a look at. You can go to a site like hdtracks.com, buy one album, download it, listen to it, and have that experience. The only really big disadvantage is that they're really, whereas now the regular digital music stores are now so well organized that if it's available on iTunes, it's available on Amazon, it's available on Google Play Music. It's a little bit more fragmented in that if you start off at HD Tracks or another site called QOBUS. Now here's where you can absolutely see at what point did each of these companies get into this business, because HD Tracks got into this business when you could buy the URL hdtracks.com. By the time QBuzz got into it, they had to invent a name to get their domain name, QOBUZ. And even then, there are a couple of creators that I really, really like where I was about to buy the album on CD. Then is this available in HD? Go to QBuzz, no. Go to HD Tracks, no. Then, okay, you know what? This is kind of a niche classical music publisher. Let's go to the publisher site. And directly from the site, I was able to get HD music files. So it's a little bit more work, but again, for specific music that you really, really like, that you really, really enjoy listening to, as opposed to simply having something to listen to while you run, it's definitely worth the $20 per album.
Excellent. All right. Well, my pick is the ecobee Switch Plus. This device is currently on sale at Amazon. It's normally $80. It's right now on sale for $48. I saw this price dropping because I've had this in my Camel queue for a long time. For folks who don't know, Camel is the site that you use to track price drops on Amazon over time, and you can sort of set alerts to say, hey, this is dropped below the certain price that you want to get it at, and right now this is on sale. So I have an ecobee thermostat in my home as opposed to a Nest Learning thermostat or one of the others. I really like the ecobee for the it offers a lot more control, and one of my favorite things about the ecobee is that it has room sensors for the rooms in your house. So what it does is, instead of providing typically, a normal thermostat, it's in the hallway or it's in an entryway or it's somewhere where you can access it. And inside of it, it is determining the temperature. So you set the house to cool to 70 degrees whenever it's summer. And it is cooling to 70 degrees and it's only paying attention to that hallway. Is the hallway at 70 degrees? Well, maybe your upstairs bedrooms are still at 74 or something like that, even whenever the hallway is 70. The room sensors allow it to sort of find an average between the 70 and the 74 to cool the house to, and uses all of those to determine what the temperature should actually be set to. And you can adjust how exactly you want that to work. They also have little occupancy sensors built into them. So if I'm not in that room, then don't do the average, do this one, etc. The ecobee Switch Plus is sort of an addition to that whole experience, but it comes with an added bonus, which is that it has Alexa built into it. So Amazon's Assistant is built in, and it has the normal microphone array that you're used to from Amazon's Alexa-enabled devices, and so it also has that far-field microphone setting. So you can talk to the Assistant on the actual light switch, and it will do all the things that you're used to with the ecobee setup, including the built-in ambient light sensor and motion sensor, where you can say, hey, if you don't detect motion in this space for more than an hour and my lights are on, you can go ahead and turn those off. Or you can set it to make it look like you're home when you're away. So, hey, I don't want it to look like I'm away. I'd like it to seem as if I'm turning on and off lights in my house, and you can do that too. You can set it to automatically turn on lights at sunset. It basically does everything that you're used to a smart light switch doing, with the added benefit, if you do use Echo devices in your home, of having that built in as well. Now, I don't recommend this next thing that I'm going to say, but you can, if you'd like to entirely do this, you can ask it to play music and it will play tinny, horrible sounding music right from the device itself. It's really not made for that. It's made for controlling other products that can do that. And it is HomeKit enabled, which for me is important because the rest of my devices in my house are works with Apple HomeKit devices, but it also works with the Google Assistant. It works with Alexa. It works with IFTTT. It works with SmartThings from Samsung and so much more. It is a Wi-Fi connected device, which I quite enjoy over the Bluetooth-enabled devices that are available because they tend to be much more responsive. So it's already a step ahead in terms of the P-Choip initiative. Very cool product and very well designed. ecobee's products I've been happy with, and this one is no slouch on that. If you have an older home that doesn't have neutral wires, then you won't be able to add this to your home. But any newer build is required to have neutral switches. I keep saying switches, neutral wires, and so you can count on that. Now, if you don't, this is the caveat I always give because I think it's important. If you don't know how to work with the electric wiring in your home, please, for the love of God, hire someone to install this because that's not something to mess around with. If you don't know what a neutral wire is and how that's different from line and load, then also hire someone to come into your home because you need to know what that means before you go plugging different wires and rewiring things. But
is there a version that'll project like the latest Fortnite dance onto your blind so that your neighbors think you are home and also dancing?
I hope that's the next model with hologram technology because I heard CES has quite a bit of that. So hopefully one day that'll be the case. But right now, like I said, available for, I think right now is $49. This morning it was at $48. The price keeps bouncing between $45 and $50. So maybe if you check it in the morning and it's at $49 or something like that, give it a second because it might drop back down to that lower price. I don't know how Amazon's magical price voodoo works, but it's always changing. But it is staying somewhere in between that half off range, which is a really good price for this. It's an excellent get, especially if you've been thinking about adding smart lighting to your home and you want the in-wall switch option. I should also note, because I don't think I did, it's not that you can only turn on and off the lights using these different methods. It also is a push button. So you can just tap it and it will turn on and off the lights like a normal light switch as well, which for me is important because not everybody wants to do all of the nonsense that I do in a home. So yeah, that is my pick. That is everyone else's picks.
I do find it interesting that we basically talk about the fact that what Nest or what these things, but we don't talk about Honeywell.
Yeah.
Talk about like an incumbent totally missing the boat.
Right.
Like just completely. Like the boat is at another continent by the time they realize, because Honeywell's just the worst.
Yeah.
They're just the worst. I'm sorry, I'm probably...
That sound you're making with the jaw clench? Yes.
They make me so angry.
Yes.
Like it's all these weird little settings and all these little schedules that barely work, and you have to like practically, you have to learn like an entire language that's like Chinese just to figure out how you're going to do this thing. And
just the worst.
This is such a cautionary tale that when you build your business over, we don't sell to consumers who get angry with us and then choose somebody else. We sell hundreds or thousands at a time to property managers and people who build buildings who never have to deal with our product on a daily basis.
Right.
Yeah. You get smoked eventually.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed. Well, folks, I believe that brings us to the end of another episode of MacBreak Weekly. Andy and Notco, if people want to check out what you're doing or if you've got anything to plug, now's the time.
As usual, hit me on Instagram or Twitter at Anatko, IHNATKO, for daily musings as well as links to other things. I'm on Boston Public Radio, WGBH, almost every week. Depends on if we have a member of the local government who needs an hour to talk to his constituents. I was on yesterday afternoon. That should be available for streaming at WGBHnews.org. I'll be on again live on Monday, so you can watch that live, watch and listen to that live or later. I'll tweet it out.
Beautiful. Pixel Core's Alex Lindsay, if people want to follow you online and also want to check out your teardowns of the broadcasts and CES keynotes, how do they do all that?
The best thing to do is just follow me on Twitter. I say a lot of things on Twitter. Some of them will make you angry. just the way I am. Just going to warn you ahead of time.
They are delightful.
I like to keep my Twitter right at 38,900. And if it gets a little higher, then I start getting more and then I call it back down and get some of the weirdos out, and so it's a really good community of 38,900. And so the Twitter's best place. I'm going to be writing a lot more articles on Medium, so you can probably find me on Medium. I think you can just search there and find that. I'm putting up one this week and going to try to put up one every week. So,
all right.
So anyway, lots of stuff about media and what I think is technological future stuff. So
sweet.
See how it goes.
And Renee Ritchie of Vector, iMore, Mobile Nation's Future fame. How can people follow along with your awesome work? And do you have anything coming up that we should be on the lookout for?
I did a thing about Apple versus Samsung and the very different ways in which they choose to announce phones and quantities in which they choose to announce phones, based already on the early year. That went up this morning. But just in general, you can go to imore.com/vector for the words and youtube.com/vector for the moving pictures.
Excellent. I am Mikah Sargent, at Mikah Sargent on most of the social networks. I'm proud to say that Smart Tech Today just added video to the podcast, so we have reached that benchmark.
It is so good. You and Matthew are so good.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, that's my pal Matthew Casanelli, co-host on the show, who is at CES right now. Bless his soul and his heart and his immune system. But yeah, we just published our first video episode yesterday. So if you haven't checked out Smart Tech Today, you totally should. You can also find me on iOS Today and Tech News Weekly throughout the week. Thank you all again for having me back here with you today. I do appreciate it. I think we had a really good show today. So good work, everyone.
I enjoyed myself. I don't know what the listeners thought, but I rarely think about what the listeners think, as is evident.
You didn't hear that. You didn't hear that, listeners. He loves our listeners.
No, I do. I'm just saying that clearly.
We love you. We just don't care what you think.
I'm not the value proposition is more of an acquired sort of thing.
Gotcha. Let's do a close-up on me. Listen, I love you, listeners. I love you, viewers. But I got to tell you.
Okay, now you're implying that I don't love our listeners.
Who loves you, baby?
Frankly, I don't like that. I don't appreciate that. I don't think that puts me in I think you're scoring points off of me now, Micah.
Give him a Harrison Ford finger, Micah. Just give him a Harrison Ford finger.
My God, it didn't take long for this love affair to fall apart, did it, Micah?
We appreciate
little bit of power, just a little bit of power.
Do a close-up on Renee now. Tell the listeners you love them.
We love you so much, Liz. You're the British heart, but I love you so much, Bill.
Everybody but Andy. So I see how it is now.
Well,
I love Andy too.
The thing is that whereas some of us are just sucking up, but then you just don't know when the knives are going to come out. With me, I like you and I'm friendly to you, and sometimes I'm a little bit cranky, but you know that's part of the honesty of the portfolio that I'm bringing to you. So when I say that I appreciate you giving your time to this podcast and all my other works, I'm going to say that.
It's Andy Cranky Pants and Notco. We do appreciate you.
So that's MacBreak Weekly for this week. That's now get back to work because break time is over. Okay, Carson, out.
Hey, I'm good with that.